They took everything from him: his wife, his job, his children. But what they didn't know was that the man they buried in shame carried a secret worth $80 million, and a truth that would destroy them all. If you love stories about silent strength, justice, and redemption, subscribe to Still Tale, because this isn't just a story. It's a reckoning. The night Roger Hendricks realized his life had become someone else's story, he was sitting alone in a 5-bedroom storage unit, eating cold beans from a can. The air smelled of rust, cardboard, and old cigarettes, the scent of forgotten lives. Just 6 months earlier, he'd been a husband, a father, a respected supervisor at the largest lumber mill in Millbrook, Pennsylvania. Now he was a ghost in his own town, the man everyone whispered about, the one who lost everything. But they didn't know what he'd found. Not yet. Roger had worked at Cromwell Lumber Industries for 18 years, honest work, the kind that left sawdust in your hair and pride in your chest. His boss, Vance Cromwell, was everything Roger wasn't: polished, privileged, dangerous, the kind of man who inherited power and wore it like armor. Roger's wife, Melanie, once said Vance had presence. Roger thought that meant charisma. Later, he realized she meant something else, the kind that pulls weaker souls into orbit and burns them up when they get too close. The betrayal didn't come suddenly. It came like a slow leak in a tire quit. Invisible, inevitable. New clothes. Late nights. Strange smiles when Vance's name was mentioned. Then, one afternoon, Roger came home early from work with a fever ant. Found Vance's silver Mercedes in his driveway. Inside his home, he heard laughter. Not just laughter. Her laughter. He stood there in the hallway, staring at the family photos on the wall. Tommy in his football uniform, Grace in her Sunday dress, his wedding picture beside them. The sound from upstairs tore through him like splintered wood. When he opened the door, he found 2 people dressing in silence. Vance didn't apologize. He just adjusted his cufflinks and said, "We'll discuss this at work tomorrow." Melanie brushed her hair at the vanity Roger had built for her on their 10th anniversary and said, "You should have seen this coming." That night, something inside Roger died not with a scream, but with a silence so deep it echoed. The next morning, Vance fired him. No warning, no severance, just a smirk and a signature. 2 weeks later, Melanie filed for divorce, full custody, child support, the house, everything. The GJ golfing buddy of Vance's called Roger unstable. The town watched quietly. Bystanders. Cowards in work boots. Roger packed what he could into his truck and slept there until even that dignity was stripped away. That's how he ended up in the storage unit, surrounded by boxers of the life he used to live. Among them was one box he didn't recognize, a brown leather briefcase. Dusty, heavy, and tagged with his name in. His Uncle Floyd's shaky handwriting. Floyd had been the family oddball, a Vietnam vet turned recluse, who lived off the grid in Montana. He died 8 months ago. The lock on the briefcase resisted until Roger pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside, $50,000 in cash, and a letter written in trembling pen strokes. "Roger, if you're reading this, you've lost everything. Good. A man must lose the world before he can rebuild his own. This isn't a gift. It's fuel. Drive to the coordinates enclosed. Behind the boulder shaped like a bear's head, you'll find the truth about your father's death. He didn't die in an accident at the mill. Cromwell killed him for the mineral rights. I've spent 40 years gathering proof. The fortune is yours, and so is the justice. Don't trust anyone, especially those who smile when you fall." Floyd Roger read it 6 times. Then he looked at the stacks of money again. He could use it to start over, or to uncover what killed his father. He made his choice. 3 days later, Roger was on the road heading west, toward Montana. The forests thickened, the air sharpened. At night, he slept in the truck, under skies wide enough to make a man feel both small and infinite. Floyd's coordinates led him deep into the wilderness to a rusted red gate, chained but unlocked by an old key Floyd had given him long ago. Beyond it, a narrow path disappeared into the trees. There, behind the bear-shaped boulder, stood a cabin. Not a shake, a fortress of secrets. Solar panels, steel door, satellite dish. Inside, the walls were covered with maps, photographs, and documents connecting Cromwell Industries to a web of corruption spanning decades. In the center, one picture stopped Roger cold, his father shaking hands with the original Cromwell, both smiling, holding papers titled Partnership Agreement, 1976. And beside them, young Vance Cromwell, another folder. Another shock. Melanie, age 16, photographed beside Vance. 22 years her senior. More photos, each more damning than the last. Bank records followed secret payments to a Melanie Driscoll account, starting the year she turned 17. His wife, Aden T., betrayed him. She'd been hired too. Recordings filled the computer. "He's getting suspicious," Melanie's voice whispered. "How much longer do I have to play housewife?" Vance answered. "Until he breaks. When he does, we take everything." Roger sat there for hours, staring at his own life in files and evidence. His marriage, his children, even his father's deathful, orchestrated, all part of the same lie. Among Floyd's documents was one titled State Transfer Hendris Mineral Holdings. Roger, his father had refused to sell his share of land rich with natural gas now worth over $80 million. Floyd had preserved his own share quietly, investing the profits and gathering proof of the Cromwell's crimes. Every receipt, every bribe, every death. And now, every ounce of it belonged to Roger. Floyd's final message appeared on a video file. "If you're seeing this, Roger, I'm gone. They think they've won, but they forgot one thing: truth waits. And truth doesn't die with men like us. Use what I've built, finish what your father started, and remember, silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of strength preparing to speak." When Roger returned to Pennsylvania, he wasn't the broken man who'd left. He wore calm like armor. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quite the kind that made others listen. He walked into the FBI field office in Pittsburgh carrying 2 hard drives, a folder, and the letter that started it all. 4 months later, headlines swept the country. Cromwell Dynasty falls 40-year conspiracy exposed. Vance was arrested at his country club. The judge who'd called Roger unstable was led away in handcuffs. Even Melanie faced charges for fraud and conspiracy. When she called from jail, her voice cracked through the static. "How could you do this to me?" she asked. Roger's silence lingered before he finally said, "You did this to yourself. I just stopped pretending not to see." It became one of those lines that stayed with people, printed on shirts, quoted in forums, because it wasn't anger. It was truth. Justice didn't feel like revenge. It felt like breathing clean air after years of choking on lies. Roger used part of Floyd's fortune to start Hendris and Sons Lumber, hiring the same men who'd once been laid off under Vance. Tommy and Grace came home cautiously at first. Trust is slow to rebuild, especially for children taught to doubt their father. But truth has a way of shining through silence. One night, Tommy asked, "Dad, why didn't you fight back sooner?" Roger smiled. "Because sometimes fighting back too soon just makes noise, and noise isn't strength. Silence, that's how you aim before you strike." Another line people remembered. Grace asked if her mom was evil. "No," Roger said softly. "Ghost. Lost, like all of us, until we find the truth." Every few weeks, Roger visits that old storage unit. He keeps paying the rent a quiet monument to the man who died there. He sits on the same cot where he once ate beans from a can and whispers a thank you to the silence that saved him. He doesn't see himself as rich, though the bank says otherwise. He measures wealth in the laughter of his children, in the men he employs with dignity, and the legacy that no longer hides behind lies. Floyd once wrote, "Sometimes losing everything is the only way to see what is real." Roger understands now, because what they stole were things a house, a job, a title. What they couldn't steal was his truth, and truth, once awakened, never sleeps again. If you believe in silent strength, in justice that takes its time, but never forget, share this story. Comment below where you're watching from, and tell us what truth means to you. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of ordinary people who face extraordinary injustice and rise quietly, powerfully, beyond it. Because here on Still Tale, silence speaks louder than revenge.